A warning now, this next story contains disturbing images. An investigation is underway after a number of incidents in the stands during last night's game between TFC and CF Montreal at BMO Field. Now, video posted on social media appears to show fights involving TFC fans and traveling Montreal supporters. CB24 has not independently verified this video. One shows a number of people brawling in the north corner of the East End. We've also blurred this video to protect the people in this video, their identity. And another video appears to show a fan throwing a megaphone in the direction of TFC midfielder Marc-Anthony Kaye. Now, CF Montreal has issued a statement saying last night's incidents are unacceptable and an investigation is underway. The team goes on to say that safety is of paramount importance, and it's consequently decided to close the visiting supporters section at Stade Saputo in Montreal for Saturday's game against Toronto. CF Montreal says TFC fans will be refunded if they've already purchased tickets. And TFC responded to the incident as well, saying it has a zero-tolerance policy for violence and that it is investigating this incident. For more on what happened, we are joined live by freelance reporter John Molinaro. Thanks so much for being with us, John. You were at that game watching last night. What did you see from your perspective? What happened?
Yeah, well, I actually didn't see anything live. I saw all the video kind of secondhand after the game was over. But yeah, some very disturbing images. You don't want to see fans brawling inside the stands, and you certainly don't want to see TFC's own supporters throwing a megaphone at TFC midfielder Marc-Anthony Kaye. That stuff like that, shouldn't be happening at any sporting event. So it's really disappointing to see, those images come across last night.
Yeah, and I've actually seen the original video. Very disturbing. I mean, that's a very intense brawl. Where was security? I know a lot of people might be wondering about that.
Yeah, so from what I understand, there wasn't any kind of security presence, which was a little bit
Really?
Baffling to me. Yeah, so I mean, inside that sort of north corner of the East Stand at BMO Field is where traveling fans, away section fans, usually sit. And oftentimes there's some sort of security presence just to sort of, maintain the peace or whatnot. But from what I understand, there was minimal or no sort of security at all. So that kind of led to pave the way for that sort of brawl to take place, which is pretty unfortunate. So I would have to think that beefing up security, for the away section at TFC home games is going to be something that the club is going to look into going forward.
Right, and we're not showing our viewers video of it, but there are reports, as you noted, of a TFC fan throwing a megaphone at a TFC player. What do you know about that?
Yeah, again, I saw that secondhand after the game. Disappointing. I can appreciate that the fans were kind of upset with the loss yesterday, and just with the way that TFC has been playing this year, because they haven't been all that great, and they're going through a rough patch of form right now. So I get that frustrations are at an all-time high, but still, to throw a megaphone at a player like Marc-Anthony Kaye, a Canadian international who's one of TFC's better players. I mean, regardless of who the player is, it's simply unacceptable, and I think it's just a really ugly scene when fans are starting to turn on players to that extent, where they're throwing stuff at players. Yeah,
you're allowed to be frustrated about a team's performance. You're maybe not allowed to do something like that. That is, totally inappropriate. As a sports journalist, I wonder what you make of this whole situation. I know you've talked about how disturbing this is, but what do you make of the fact that something like this happened in a city like Toronto, in a country like Canada? I think if we were talking about something like this in Europe, it would be much more normal. This sort of thing doesn't really happen in Canada. Have you ever seen something like this at BMO Field?
Yeah, it's actually happened a few times whenever Montreal and Toronto plays, and not just in Toronto. I can recall incidents at Stade Saputo in Montreal where, likewise, there wasn't much of a security presence around the TFC fans inside the away section. And, they were kind of essentially were defenseless as Montreal fans, threw stuff at them, or after the game there were brawls between both sets of fans outside of Stade Saputo, when had there been a proper security presence, it could have prevented it. Much like the one yesterday, had there been a proper security presence, the whole situation could have been avoided. So, I mean, I don't want to sort of portray it as these things happening all the time. They are rare, but they do happen. And again, I think it's just a matter of both clubs really kind of beefing up security, particularly when they play each other, because there's such animosity between the two teams. These teams really don't like each other on the pitch, and it's sort of unfortunate that it's sometimes that sort of heated passion carries over into the stands.
Right, and that animosity is there. So with that in mind, looking ahead to Saturday's game, what are you expecting? I imagine fans are on edge, especially TFC fans, as they make their way to Montreal.
Yeah, I think Montreal is doing the right thing by sort of banning, TFC fans inside the sort of supporter section of Stade Saputo. I think that hopefully that will sort of cool temperatures down a little bit so soon after the game on Tuesday. What'll be really interesting to see is when CF Montreal comes back to Toronto to play them later in the year at BMO Field. I think it might be summer, if I'm not mistaken. So hopefully by then things will kind of get back to normal and everyone can just kind of focus, on soccer and the action on the pitch, rather on the idiots inside the stands.
Absolutely. We'll leave it there. Sports journalist John Molinaro, thanks so much for your perspective and for joining us here on CB24.
You're welcome, Lena, anytime.